Well, good morning. It's Friday morning. Haven't gotten all the programs done this week that we should have done, but been busy, and I just haven't been able to get them done. So we'll just do what we can. We're Friday, chapter 38 of Jeremiah, the book of the prophet Jeremiah. This is right before the fall of Jerusalem. The agreed upon date is either 589 or 588. I find that hard to believe since we're going to run out of bread soon, and the city falls in 586. But again, I'm not a scholar. I'm just a student. I was just oh gosh, I'm sorry, a scar where they did the brain surgery just bothered me today. Sorry about that. Anyway, chapter 38, Jeremiah. Pick up. He's in jail again, but he's just in the court of the prison. But the king's men, they found out that he was there. They're not happy about it. They think he ought to die because he said that the Babylonians are going to take over. Well, they are going to take over. They're going to destroy Jerusalem. They're going to burn the temple. They're going to invade and capture all of Judah and take them into captivity. Chapter 38, verse 1. We'll catch up. Then Shephatiah the son of Mattan and Gedaliah the son of Pashur and Jucal the son of Shelemiah and Pashur the son of Malachi. That Jucal, he's the blabbermouth, because he's the one that went and caused Jeremiah to get thrown in jail in the first place. And heard the words that Jeremiah had spoken unto all the people, saying, Thus saith the Lord, he that remaineth in this city shall die by the sword, by the famine, and by the pestilence, but he that goeth forth to the Chaldeans shall live, for he shall have his life for a prey, and shall live. Now, this is really upsetting the higher up, the princes, the lords, the knights, so to speak, the swords that undergird and uphold the king. Thus saith the Lord, this city shall surely be given into the hand of the king of Babylon's army, and he shall take it. So therefore the princes said unto the king Zedekiah, We beseech thee, let this man be put to death. Kill him, shut him up. For thus he weakeneth the hands of the men of war that remain in the city, the hands of all the people, in speaking such words unto them. For this man seeketh not the welfare of this people, but the hurt. It's not true at all. Jeremiah didn't want to see Jerusalem destroyed. He was just giving the word of the Lord that the Lord had given him. God gave him a commission. He's carrying it out. Then Zedekiah, the king, said, Oh, well, let's go back and just finish what the princes said to the king. We beseech thee, let this man be put to death. For thus he weakeneth the hands of the men of war that remain in the city, and the hands of all the people, in speaking such words unto them. For this man seeketh not the welfare of the people, but the hurt. Of course, we know that's not true. Then Zedekiah the king said, Behold, he is in your hand. For the king is not he that can do anything against you. In other words, the siege and this war with Babylon has so weakened the king that he only remains on the throne because of the handful of princes that are still supporting him. See? So, in verse 6, they, the princes, took Jeremiah and cast him into the dungeon of Malchiah, the son of Himelech, that was in the court of the prison. Now, this dungeon they're describing is like it's just a big hole in the ground. It's a pit. It might have been an abandoned well from the description of it. Then took they Jeremiah and cast him into the dungeon of Malchiah, the son of Hamelech, and was in the court of the prison. And they let down Jeremiah with cords. In other words, they had to lower him down to the bottom of it. There's no way to walk down there. That's how deep it was. And in the dungeon, there was no water but mire. So Jeremiah sunk in the mire. I mean, it's just a bog. It's like that gumbo dirt they have down in southeast Texas along the coast. A mix of clay and sand and dirt. It's wet and sucked him down. Now, Ebed-Melech the Ethiopian, one of the eunuchs which was in the king's house, is one of the advisors. They made them eunuchs so that they wouldn't mess with the women, you know. Very common deal right now that the men who worked in the king's house, well, that's all they could do in the king's house was work, because they couldn't do the hokey pokey, so to speak, because they had been neutered, and it was to keep these men away from the king's harem, or wives, or concubines, whatever you want to call them. Now, when Ebed-Melech the Ethiopian, one of the eunuchs which was in the king's house, heard that they had put Jeremiah in the dungeon, a king then sitting in the gate of Benjamin, well, you know what? He's pretty much alone already, because his princes are telling him what to do. He'd already told the princes, well, I can't stop you. If you want to kill him, I can't stop you from killing him. If you want to let him live, I can't make you let him live. I have no power except your sword and your gold. That's my power. Isn't that a terrible admission to make? See, when you commission is from Christ, you have the power of the living God behind you. The gates of hell cannot stand against you. Did you know that? You'll have opposition. Men will hate you. Satan will raise up forces against you. Anytime you do a work for the Lord, the devil will try to shut it down. Just be strong in the Lord, and do not listen to anybody. Listen only to the voice, that still small voice that's inside you, which is the Holy Ghost that says, when you go to the left and when you go to the right, it says, this is the way, walk ye in it, and care not about what any man might say. Then you'll never be beholden to him. You know, you might not be a big deal, but you also won't have to lose your dignity and your honor by letting some other man tell you what to do. You know, I'm an old man and I'm weak and I'm sick. But if you're going to make me do something, you better bring a sack lunch, because it's going to take you all day, Bubba. I'm not saying that you can't whip me. I'm just saying that you will have no fun doing it. I don't fight fair. Never commit yourself to men. Ever. Ever, never, ever, never, ever. Don't do it. Because they'll tie you up in knots, and then you have to do what they want you to do. Stay clear of those entanglements, beloved, especially if you're a preacher, especially if you're a man of God. You don't need any man. All you need is Christ. Oh, but they're going to pay me this. Who pays you? Do they pay you, or does Christ pay you? If those wicked men don't pay you, Christ will find somebody else to pay you. I've learned to live that way. I don't worry about anything. Christ always pays me. The workman is worthy of his meat, you know. The laborer is worthy of his hire. God cares for us. If he cares for the oxen and he cares for the birds, he cares for us to take care of us. If you're carrying out your orders. Then took they Jeremiah, cast him into the dungeon of Malchiah, the son of Hamelech, that was in the court of the prison. They let down Jeremiah with cords. In the dungeon, there was no water but mire, so Jeremiah sunk in the mire. He's up to his shins in the goo, or his knees maybe. Now when Ebed-Melech the Ethiopian, one of the eunuchs that was in the king's house, heard that they had put Jeremiah in the dungeon, the king then sitting in the gate of Benjamin alone, Ebed-Melech went forth out of the king's house. Saw him out there. Where's the king? Oh, he's over there by himself pouting because he's not really the king. His cronies that have the swords and the money, they're the king. The king then sitting in the gate of Benjamin. Ebed-Melech went forth out of the king's house and spake to the king, saying, that's why you always need to know these people you vote for. You see who gives money to their campaigns. We got senators that are owned by the oil companies. We got, senators and congressmen that are owned by big pharma. Some of them, owned by big agribusiness. Some of them owned by the chemical industry. Some of them owned by the military-industrial complex. See who is really signing the senators' checks, because whoever gives them the money buys their vote. They always vote straight in line with the people who give them the most money. Well, that's what the kings did. They had to have enough swords to keep them on the throne. They had to have enough money, enough gold to keep them on the throne. It hasn't changed. The king then sitting in the gate of Benjamin, Ebed-Melech went forth out of the king's house and spake unto the king, saying, My lord the king, these men have done evil. Talking about the princes that put Jeremiah in the pit, the dungeon, in the mire. My lord the king, these men have done evil in all that they have done to Jeremiah the prophet, whom they have cast into the dungeon. They cast him down there. And he is like to die for hunger in the place where he is. In the last chapter, didn't the king promise that Jeremiah would have a piece of bread as long as there was any bread left in the city? I bet Ebed-Melech knew that. And then he says, he's like to die of hunger in the place where he is. For there is no bread in the city. See, the bread is run out. That's why I think that this is very close to the fall in 586, not in 589 or 87, 88. But it's a minor point. I'm just glad we have the word. I can't prove when it was, neither can they, but this tells me that the fall of Jerusalem is near because they don't have any bread left. My lord the king, these men have done evil in all that they have done to Jeremiah the prophet, whom they have cast into the dungeon. He's like to die for hunger in the place where he is. For there is no more bread in the city. Then the king commanded Ebed-Melech the Ethiopian, saying, Take from hence 30 men with thee, and take up Jeremiah the prophet out of the dungeon before he die. Now, do you understand how big a deal this is? The men who support the king with their swords, with their armies, their men, their servants, their armed servants, with their gold. These men were the ones that put Jeremiah in the dungeon. Now this eunuch, Ebed-Melech, the Ethiopian, asked for mercy for Jeremiah. And the king has just told the princes that he can't stop them from putting him down there. But now he's going to have 30 men from the house, servants, to go and help Ebed-Melech pull Jeremiah out of the dungeon. There's a lot going on here. When the princes were standing around them, probably swords girthed up on them, their swords strapped around them. He said, y'all do whatever you want to do. When they were gone, maybe he remembered his promise. Maybe he got brave. Maybe he was mad because they told him what to do. But he tells this Ethiopian eunuch to go try to save Jeremiah and take 30 men from the palace with you. In a way, Zedekiah just put his big boy pants on. It's like, I'll show them to tell me what to do. I'll do just the opposite of what they want to do. And I'm sure this caused a big stink later on. Then the king commanded Ebed-melech the Ethiopian, saying, Take from hence 30 men with thee, and take up Jeremiah the prophet out of the dungeon before he die. And Ebed-melech took the men with him, and went into the house of the king under the treasury, and took thence old cast clouts and old rotten rags, and let them down by cords into the dungeon to Jeremiah. They made a harness rope out of that and dropped it down into the pit. And Ebed-melech the Ethiopian said unto Jeremiah, Hey, how's the weather down there? No, that's not what he said. What he said was, Put now these old cast clouts and rotten rags under thine armholes, under the cords. And Jeremiah did so, padding under his armpits. We'll lift him up like that. So they drew Jeremiah with the cords and took him up out of the dungeon. And Jeremiah remained in the court of the prison. Now either the princes were off causing trouble somewhere else, or they knew they had been rebuked by the king and they may be plotting to kill him, or maybe plotting to do something to get their revenge, because these are really proud men. And Jeremiah remained in the court of the prison. And Zedekiah the king sent and took Jeremiah the prophet unto him into the third entry that is in the house of the Lord. And the king said unto Jeremiah, I will ask thee a thing, hide nothing from me. Now this, he's not sending messengers. This is King Zedekiah talking to the prisoner Jeremiah, who's in the courtyard now. He's not in the dungeon. He's not in the prison, not in the jailhouse. You still can't leave, but he's there. And Jeremiah gets somebody, probably Ebed-melech, or one of those men, to bring Jeremiah back so he can talk to him. He talks to him in private, not in front of his lords and princes and everything. And the king said unto Jeremiah, and he's doing it in the temple court, up against the temple, because it's in the third entry of the temple. So they're in the house of the Lord. They're at the temple, the soon to be destroyed temple. And the king said unto Jeremiah, I will ask thee a thing. Hide nothing from me. And Jeremiah said unto Zedekiah, If I declare it unto thee, wilt thou not surely put me to death? I can't trust you, Zedekiah, Jeremiah says. You let me out of jail, and then you let your friends put me in a worse place than I was, down in the pit, in a dungeon. I can't trust you. You said I would have bread until there was no bread in the city. Then you threw me down a well. We don't know how long Jeremiah was there, but he wasn't eating down there. He wasn't getting his piece of bread. And then while he's in the dungeon, we discover that the bread has run out in the city. And Jeremiah said, Why should I help you? Why should I tell you anything? Because I can't trust you. Jeremiah said unto Zedekiah, If I declare it unto thee, wilt thou not surely put me to death? And if I give thee counsel, wilt thou not hearken unto me? He says, even if I tell you, you won't listen. You won't do anything different. God's already told me what he's going to do to you. There's not anything we can do about that. So Zedekiah the king sware secretly unto Jeremiah, saying, As the Lord liveth that made us this soul, I will not put thee to death, neither will I give thee into the hands of these men that seek thy life. Now we know as readers, and I'm sure Jeremiah knew because he had the Spirit of the Lord, he knew that Zedekiah could not permit those men from taking Jeremiah again if they wanted to take him again. He couldn't do anything to stop him the first time, and he sure can't do anything to stop him the second time. Jeremiah knows all this. So Zedekiah the king sware secretly unto Jeremiah, saying that as the Lord liveth that made us this soul, I will not put thee to death, neither will I give thee into the hand of these men that seek thy life. I'm sure that Zedekiah probably meant that, but I also realize that there's no way that he could make good on that boast, on that promise, because it was out of his hands. Remember what he told him about when they wanted to kill Jeremiah? Back in verse 5, then Zedekiah the king said, behold, he is in your hand, for the king is not he that can do anything against you. In other words, I'm not strong enough to stop you. I will not put thee to death, neither will I give thee into the hand of these men that seek thy life. And then said Jeremiah to Zedekiah, thus saith the Lord, the God of hosts, the God of Israel. He's making the offer again, sports fans. God is making an offer of mercy and clemency to Zedekiah again. One more time. He keeps giving him this offer. But look at this offer. Look at the details. Look at the benefits to this offer that God gives Zedekiah, the unbelieving Zedekiah, even at this late moment. Is it because the king let Jeremiah out of the miry pit, out of the dungeon, out of the well, whatever it was, the abandoned well? I don't think so, because God has been making this offer several times, and now he even sweetens the deal a little bit. So I don't think it has anything to do with Zedekiah's treatment of Jeremiah, because this deal has already been offered. Then Jeremiah said unto Zedekiah, thus saith the Lord, the God of hosts, the God of Israel, if thou, Zedekiah, wilt assuredly go forth unto the king of Babylon's princes, in other words, go out and surrender, quit fighting, open the gates, walk out, you king, you and your prince, walk out. Well, Zedekiah already knows that ain't going to work, because he can't make his princes do anything. If thou wilt surely go out unto the king of Babylon's princes, then thy soul shall live, and this city shall not be burned with fire, and thou shalt live in thine house. If you'll just go out and surrender, then I won't burn Jerusalem, and you can live, and your house can live, your sons, your wives, your children, your grandchildren. If thou wilt assuredly go forth unto the king of Babylon's princes, then thy soul shall live, and this city shall not be burned with fire. And thou shalt live. My glasses keep slipping down where I can't see. I'll give my nose a sweaty. If thou wilt assuredly go forth unto the king of Babylon's princes, this city shall not be burned. Thou shalt live, thy soul shall live, and this city shall not be burned with fire, and thou shalt live and thine house. But, here's the all-encompassing but. But, if thou refuse to go forth, I fell down. If thou wilt assuredly go forth unto the king of Babylon's princes, then thy soul shall fall, thy soul shalt live, and this city shall not be burned with fire, and thou shalt live in thine house. But if thou wilt not go forth to the king of Babylon's princes, then shall this city be given into the hand of the Chaldeans, and they shall burn it with fire, and thou shalt not escape out of their hand. In other words, if you, Zedekiah, go out and surrender to the armies of the Chaldeans, the city won't be burned. I'll save your life and the lives of your family. They'll go into captivity, but he saves their lives, and the city isn't burned. But if thou go not forth to the king of Babylon's princes, then shall this city be given into the hand of the Chaldeans, and they shall burn it with fire, and thou shalt not escape out of their hand. Offer number one: surrender. Jerusalem survives. You and your family survive. In captivity, but you live. Door number two: you keep doing what you're doing. You don't surrender. The Chaldeans burn Jerusalem to the ground, and you die. And Zedekiah the king, verse 19, said unto Jeremiah, I'm afraid of the Jews that are fallen to the Chaldeans, lest they deliver me into their hand, and they mock me. What he's afraid of is the people that he's been oppressing. Some of them have already surrendered to the king of Babylon. He's had army units, soldiers that have defected from him and joined the Chaldeans because the Babylonians are the wave of the future. They're rolling up the carpet in front of them, so why not join them and live? And so I was a soldier for Zedekiah, and I'll just be a soldier for Nebuchadnezzar, and then he can pay me and feed me, and I won't starve, and I'm going to do the same thing I've been doing. I'll just kill Jews instead of Babylonians, instead of Chaldeans. This is a familiar deal. He says, you don't want to give me into the hands of the Jews, because the ones that have gone over, the ones that have fallen over to the Chaldeans and joined up with them, lest they deliver me into their hands and they mock me. Now, this goes back to Saul when he died, and he doesn't want to be. What he's afraid of is that they'll do something like they were going to do to Saul, like strip his body, cut off his head, display him naked, all this kind of stuff, put his head on a pike. He didn't want this to happen. We go back to Saul. Saul was afraid of the same thing. King Saul in chapter 31, now the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled from before the Philistines, fell down slain in Mount Gilboa. And the Philistines followed hard upon Saul and upon his sons, and the Philistines slew Jonathan, and Abinadab, and Melchishua, Saul's sons. The battle went sore against Saul, and the archers hit him, and he was sore wounded of the archers. Then said Saul unto his armor-bearer, draw thy sword and thrust me through therewith, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through and abuse me. But his armor-bearer would not, for he was sore afraid. Therefore Saul took a sword and fell upon it. And when his armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he fell likewise upon his sword and died with him. Now this is what Zedekiah is afraid of. So Saul died, and his 3 sons and his armor-bearer, all his men, the same day together. And then when the men of Israel that were on the other side of the valley, and they that were on the other side of Jordan, saw that the men of Israel fled, that Saul and his sons were dead, they forsook the cities and fled. And the Philistines came and dwelt in them. And it came to pass on the morrow, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen in Mount Gilboa. They cut off his head and stripped his armor and sent into the land of the Philistines round about to publish it in the house of their idols and among the people. And they put his armor in the house of Ashtaroth, and they fastened his body to the wall of Bethshan. When the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead heard of that which the Philistines had done to Saul, all the valiant men arose and went all night and took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Bethshan and came to Jabesh and burnt them there. And they took their bones and buried them under a tree at Jabesh and fasted for 7 days. That's what the king Zedekiah was afraid of. Verse 19, and Zedekiah the king said unto Jeremiah, I am afraid of the Jews that are fallen to the Chaldeans, lest they deliver me into their hands and they mount me. But I tell you, you don't need to be afraid of other men. Men can't do anything to you except make fun of you, torture you, steal your money and kill you, rape your wife, burn your house. They can do all these things, but beyond this life, they have no power over you. Don't fear what men say. Don't fear what men do. Determine in your heart that you will follow the Lord, whatever the cost, no matter what the cost is. I believe in a hill called Mount Calvary. I believe whatever the cost. And blah, blah, blah. I will cling to the old rugged cross. Fear not him that can kill the body, but rather fear him that after he hath killed the body can cast both body and soul into hell. Yea, rather fear him. Don't be afraid of people. But Jeremiah said, they shall not deliver thee. Obey. And we'll continue there tomorrow. God bless you.